So hello and welcome to the Dharma.life podcast. I'm your host, Aloise.life Middleton, and this week I want to invite you to my Follow Your Highest Excitement Challenge. I'm going to be running a 4-day challenge in my Facebook group. The link is in the section under the YouTube video. Please come and join us. Now is an incredible time on the planet to be building a 5D life in alignment with your soul. And it's much easier to do that with like-minded, conscious community around you. So please come and join the Follow Your Highest Excitement Challenge. You won't regret it. It's a high vibrational community of people changing the world, doing their Dharma, making a difference, and living in this new 5D energy. You will be absolutely blown away with the life that you can create. If you can believe it, you can create it. Believing is seeing.
So hello and welcome to the Dharma Life podcast. I'm your host, Aloise.life Middleton. And today I have with me an incredible woman. We've just been chatting for about 40 minutes before we came on air. This is going to be a long podcast, be warned. Andrea Foulkes has moved from modeling into a TV career, and she now calls herself an intuitive visionary. And you guys are going to find out why on this podcast. So Andrea, welcome to the Dharma Life podcast.
Thank you, Eloise. Lovely to finally connect, isn't it?
I know. Just to explain to the audience, we've been trying to organise this conversation. It feels like a couple of months almost.
Yeah.
Taking its time, hasn't it?
Time kind of thing, I think. It obviously had to be for this time. I think everything's always kind of time sensitive, isn't it?
Yeah, I would agree. It's almost like the divine timing of it. But I knew I wanted to get you on the podcast because we're connected on Facebook, and I just love your message. You know, you're out there, you're speaking the truth. So it's very important to me that we are speaking the truth on this channel. So I knew that you were somebody that I really wanted to talk to. So
thank you. Well, it's 20 years I've been consciously aware of speaking the truth, whereas I think before, we say we're asleep, but I don't think we really are asleep. I think we're just in another fragment of ourselves, maybe having experiences we needed to have to finally be ready to step into what I would call your authentic self, you know, and you're walking more and more towards embodying that multi-dimensional authentic self. And now is definitely, if we state the date, it's the 18th of September 2020. I think, you know, if there was any shadow of doubt that something is happening on the planet, there is no mistaking it now, that you cannot see that something is inherently changing. You know, you can say it's wrong. So from a third dimensional perspective, it's very wrong. But from a higher perspective, we have got to kind of go through what I call it the corona times, the corona awakening, which, you know, corona truly means the crown chakra. So we're going through this big awakening now, and it may be worse than we anticipated. I mean, I was told 20 years ago when I first started waking up that, you know, there would be a time on the planet where the image I saw of myself was just holding a megaphone and going, everyone, stay in your heart, stay in your heart, stay in your heart. You know,
it's not far off that, really. That's kind of what you're doing, isn't it, at the moment?
The thing is, though, when I was shown that 20 years ago, the impression that I got of the people that I would be saying this to was they would go, oh, thanks for the reminder. Yes, you're absolutely right. Thank you so much. Yes, let's remain calm, stay in our hearts. But I didn't anticipate it would be quite how challenging it is to wake up people right now, and that we're using this terminology like sheeple or asleep people or confused or lost or all these different words to describe this separation between us all now.
Yeah, and I think well, obviously being people we are seeing things from a higher perspective, I do think it's important that we are also coming from a compassionate higher perspective. So I have to admit, I'm not a massive fan of the sheeple description. But we were talking about it, weren't we, before we came on air? And it's almost like, so I do think that some people have got contracts so that they actually, or they're not in their upper chakras, they just can't see what is happening, or they've not had enough lifetimes in the planet almost to enable them to see what's happening on the
I think
moment.
From a therapist's point of view, and you're correct, it's like it, you know, people are offended by words, and it's quite interesting that people have, I've noticed people be offended by, I'm offended by you saying sheeple, but why are you offended? Because nobody's saying you're a sheeple, you're self-identifying as
Nice.
and that's why you know, because if you're really going to help people heal, you've got to offend them.
Well, it's the only way to wake them up, isn't it?
You can't kind of tiptoe on, you know, eggshells around them, you know, and that's, I think, where the false light work comes in, because that's kind of tiptoeing on the, you know, oh, I don't want to offend anybody. I want everyone to like me.
Yeah.
I want to be popular. And then, you know, from a therapist or a spiritual teacher's point of view, a lot of people get frightened that as they personally evolve in themselves as a therapist or a spiritual teacher, then they're frightened, I'm going to lose my following. But you're going to sell out your own soul. And you've got to risk losing your following.
Then you attract the right people.
Yeah, to be true to yourself. And I think there's a great line in, if anyone's familiar with the poem, which you might have come across, the Invitation by Orion Mountain Dreamer. It's a beautiful poem, but there's a great line in it which says, can you betray another to be true to yourself, bear the accusation of betrayal and not betray your own soul, and be faithless and therefore trustworthy?
Wow, powerful.
Profound.
Yeah, absolutely powerful. Yeah, because you're also, I suppose you're coming from that place of not only self-certainty, but also you're doing it for their own good. You know,
and that's, you've got to risk not being liked.
Yes, and all of us. There's so, yeah, and I'll be honest, that was at the beginning of lockdown, because I saw it so clearly. I joined all the dots. You know, I knew about the banking system, I knew about the paedophilia, but I got to see the extent of it. Like, I didn't realize, you know, the extent of what was happening. And right at the beginning of lockdown, I knew I needed to start speaking my truth. And of course, that caused so much stuff with existing friends that basically couldn't get their heads around it or can't get their heads around it. And that for me was big growth, because I just couldn't not speak any of my truth, but at the same time it was causing friction. And, you know, so yeah, I think, and that's quite a difficult thing for us to come through as human beings, because we want to be liked and we like to be supported by our friends.
Yeah, and when you give up wanting to be liked and you want to be transparent and honest to yourself more, because I think, you know, it's when you see people diagnosed with illnesses like cancer and stuff, people say, oh, isn't that so awful? She's such a lovely person to have got cancer. I mean, she's so kind, she's so giving, she's so all these things. But the truth of it is, she isn't kind and giving to herself. And that's why you like her, because she's constantly laying on the floor to give to the other people. And that's probably the reason why you've manifested this, you know, imbalance in your body and created the cells to vibrate in such a way that they're disharmonious to your own being. And so you have to learn then to truly love yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love what you said about the kind of false light. That makes, you know, so much sense, because you see the kind of Deepak Chopras and the Marianne Williamsons, and they're out there with the what's the classic text that they all kind of Course in Miracles and everything. And it is all love and light and shiny and lovely. And actually, where's the deep down breakdowns to breakthroughs and the shadow work and the, you know, really having, like, for me, my breakdown was a big part of my awakening. You know, and
I can say that breakdown to breakthrough. And it's like, I never really got stuck into the false light matrix, so I could see it from the beginning. And so, although because I had such a strange awakening, I sort of awoke myself really 20 years ago, and these, you know, like star beings came and were rewiring my body, and I was doing this over myself for like 3 months and downloading all these channelings about world events and what was going to happen.
Wow.
And my role in what I would be doing. And it all seemed a bit far-fetched at the time. And I didn't really share it with anybody because I thought they'll think I'm mad. Which I think is the thing that people repeatedly on a spiritual awakening journey are terrified of, is, you know, people thinking they're mad, you know, but you've got to kind of go through that process and risk that to be true to yourself. Because once you realize that it's only your soul that's going to benefit, and it's like a friend said to me years ago, he said, oh, when I see your name, Andrea Foulkes, I don't see your name, I see it as the anagram, so all the letters move. And he said, I see it as saying soul, car, which is, you know, the light body, car means light body. So it says soul, car, and fear.
Oh, nice.
So I feel like my soul is here to just not live in any fear whatsoever. And every experience I've gone through in life is to push you to feel. Like last year, I broke my ankle really badly on my doorstep. And I think that might have been linked to 5G frequencies coming out of Glastonbury Festival. And I had a smart meter still in my house. And I had a very strong BT hub. And so I think the culmination of all those things, and then some strange spiritual things happened a few days before that, because I literally fell to the floor. So I broke this ankle. I waited 5 hours for an ambulance, 3 hours at A&E. And then when they saw me, they said, oh, you're going to need surgery on both sides of your ankle. And I just fell into this space of absolute peace in myself. And when I said, no, I don't think so, and they said, oh, you'll have to speak to the surgeon. So the surgeon came in and he said, you need surgery, you'll not be able to walk. And I just found myself going, with the greatest love and honour and respect for the work you do, I must honour the work I've done for the last 20 years. So just put it in a plaster cast and I'll be going, and squidge it together.
What happened to your ankle?
But they weren't very pleased, and I live on my own, so this was hugely challenging for me because I live on my own. They put a plaster cast on, so it was that heavy plaster cast, which I knew that was what I wanted because I knew my body would be able to breathe. And they tried to squash it back together, so you have 3 days where they put this back cast on, and then they put a proper one on 3 days after that. So I had that, and I was in this state of euphoria, like there was no pain. I mean, even when I fell, I moved my foot to put it back in the right position. There was pain in the minute it happened, but after that there was no pain. So I lay here in some kind of ascended state for a few weeks until they had to change it and put a fiberglass cast on. And then it was like the fires of hell came in.
Wow.
And then I had to deal with all the other things, which was, you know, in your mind, you think all these people are going to come to support you. But in truth, that wasn't what happened. And luckily, I knew a few people who were saying, you need to come and stay at my house, but I couldn't move because I wasn't going to do surgery. So I needed to stay still to keep my ankle from moving in the initial few weeks. So I had to pay a professional caregiver to come and help me. And she came every day. And there were twice in those points where I thought I would die, and that was it. I wasn't going to make it.
Wow.
because my body would go into shock, and I was like, I look white, and I was like, I don't know if I'm going to make it. And I did make it. And not only that, you know, a year later now, from me telling I wouldn't be able to walk, I did actually break my body down on a molecular level and pull all the bits back together and clear past lives that came up. So I'd have past lives where I'd been a nurse on a battlefield, and all these men had got blown off legs and wounded bits of their bodies. So it traumatized, it brought up that shock in me. Then there was another time I had my ankle caught in a bear trap. And I think the reason I damaged this leg was many years ago, I was having a massage and I got a flashback when she pushed really hard. So through massage of myofascial tissue, you know, bring up past life cell memories, but then you've got to work through the cell memory. So in that time, I saw myself as an African woman with one leg. And then the muscles in my body stopped firing. Even when I saw a chiropractor, he said, the muscles are not firing. I said, yeah, because my mind now thinks I'm an African woman with one leg, because I've brought that memory through to the surface. So now I've got to reprogram my mind to do what I do with clients, which is this lifetime's not happening. You know, you don't need to hold those memories anymore. The pain in your body can go. It's not relevant to this lifetime. This is
the work, isn't it, that you do with others. So just so I understand, and so hopefully our audience can understand. So basically, obviously our souls live many, many lifetimes And often we bring that trauma into the current lifetime. And so you go in and you're clearing past lives and blockages.
What I'd say is when I had my awakening, I ended up very quickly being the past life regression expert on ITV show This Morning. And
I remember.
Then from that, they made me 2 series a show called Have I Been Here Before, is taking celebrities back to past lives. But we weren't really focusing on the healing aspect of it, which is the big thing that I really do. So I'm not just doing past life regression, I'm weaving into womb trauma, past lives, inner child. And then sometimes people think these lifetimes are theirs, but they're ancestral lives. And sometimes they're entities' lives that have attached to them. So they're not even their lifetime.
Oh, wow.
So I'm really good at spirit releasement, which is discerning which is your life. And because I can read all timelines, that's my skill. I can just do that. That's it. It's very easy for me to see whether they're your lives or somebody else's. And because what you're doing when you go into a regression, it's not for the fluffiness of who was I in a past life. You're finding the origin of the cell memory. So you want to find the first time your body went into that cell memory. So often you get replication of lifetimes after that. So all the other lifetimes are built on the same trauma you never really resolved. So if you can get back to the original trauma of when your either issue, ailment or belief
started,
programmed in either by yourself, it's always you programming yourself, but it looks like other people are programming you because you in the past life may have believed what people said about you. Same in childhood, if someone's told you something, you have moved on from that, but the subconscious never moves on from it. The subconscious is always reminding you of that belief. So no matter how many self-help seminars you go to where they're going, yay, woo, you can do it. If you have programming in the subconscious, yay, you can do it, won't work for you. It will work for the people who don't have programming because all they're doing is putting positive programming into
they haven't got the negative program, they've got to undo.
Into a vacant space where there's no negativity. It's just they've never thought to think in such a positive way. But when you're someone who's got a lot of negativity and it might not just be that one area, it might be in many areas, or somebody else might look at you and think, well, you just, you look so sparkly and twinkly, but within the diamond of who you are, there's a facet where it's just like totally dirty. And that's where your repeated story and patterns from all these lifetimes. And then of course because you've got that trauma in your soul energy, from a soul perspective, when you come into incarnation, you're going to pick a family to incarnate into that's going to bring all this stuff to the surface. But then when you get into this family, you then go, oh my God, surely I didn't pick these people. This guy, surely this must all be wrong, but actually you pick those people because that would give you the best opportunity to work through this stuff.
Yeah, because the way I would call that in the Akashic Records kind of modality is it's your soul lesson. You choose a particular lesson, something you've had in a past life, to then come into and work on in this lifetime. So yeah, it's sort of similar.
Yeah, but from the broader Akashic of where we are as a species now, this end in 2020, this is the end of a 26,000 year cycle. So everybody has played everything now. This is the end game now. Nobody knows 100% for sure, but you either carry on this 3D game somewhere else, or you drop it and you go into 5D consciousness now. And that, I think, is the split we're seeing. That's why, some of the people will not wake up. Like you said, you don't think they're going to wake up, and they might not. And they'll just maybe drift off into this 3D earth somewhere else, or they'll coexist within our reality, but not in the same reality. And, my experience of 2020 now in September is a bit like that. If I go out, I'm wearing my lanyard, and I'm wearing it to really allow other people to see they don't need to wear a mask if they don't want to. But nobody's bothering me. And yet I've got friends saying, oh, people confront me all the time like, hey, you're not wearing a mask. I don't get that.
No, I don't get it either.
I get people, I feel like they're being extra nice to me. And then sometimes I feel this energy of they're happy for my freedom.
Yes, I can relate to that as well.
Which is unusual, because somebody else is having conflict, but that's because they've not worked through that yet. So they feel guilty for not wearing one.
Absolutely. Wow. And so going back to your ankle then, you managed to cure?
So I cured my ankle 110%. It was a huge amount of work, I have to say, because the ligaments tightened as well. And if you see me walking now, I don't limp. You would never know that I ever damaged it. And I'm even started running again.
I hope you went back and found that consultant.
You know what? Only really, I was still limping in January this year when I went to Madeira, but Madeira helped me because it's very steep when you walk, so it stretched the ligaments out even more. And I was going to go back and go, look, and then lockdown happened.
Oh. Well, I'm sure your timelines might bump. You never know, just so you can show him. And I love that as well, because almost what you're saying is like the hero's journey. You know, how our darkness, we have to go. And I think I'd love to talk about this with you, Andrea, because we just talked about this before we came on air. And, you know, I think this whole idea of we have to go through our pain, you know, we can't resist it. We you know, those things that happen to us are part of having a human experience. It's how we respond to them, you know, and you've just demonstrated that beautifully with your ankle story.
Yeah, and I had precancerous cells on my cervix, and I had to go into that as well. And, you know, when I healed that, which was a big story, but a small story for me, because I didn't really tell anybody. And that's the other thing. If you think you can heal something yourself, tell as few people as possible who are not going to support you to heal it naturally. Because I told 2 friends and I thought both of them would go, yeah, Andrea, you can heal that. But actually they went, no, you need to have surgery and get that cut out.
So their energy was...
I didn't think so. And so you don't want anybody marring your vision. You only share with as few people as possible your vision that you can heal yourself. And it was the day when they said I needed to have these cells removed that actually I'd taken myself for a separate smear test after I'd done the emotional and the journey work on myself to heal it, and it came back negative. So I took that to say, well, I think you'll find I don't need this.
Wow.
And what I brought up in myself was, even though I knew I'd been date raped when I was 18, and I was never angry with the guy, I was always forgiving of him, but my body wasn't. You know, my body had gone unconscious. You know, there was the point where I'd gone, no, and then I didn't remember the rest of it. And so what had happened when I'd gone unconscious was what was held in the cells in my cervix.
Oh, I
what
see.
needed to come out to heal.
So did you experience that pain at a later date then?
It wasn't even the fact, it was the fact that I just disassociated from my body. Right. I think I've done that in so many lifetimes to survive, is you disassociate.
Yes, of course.
So when you've got this concept of being maybe misunderstood, the sort of fluffy spirituality where it's like, oh, forgive everybody. Yeah, you're here to forgive people. You can only get to forgiveness when you've gone through acknowledging that there's rage and there's anger. And even if you don't, which I didn't have the rage and anger. So if you're not going to extol outwardly rage and anger about things that have happened to you, your body will always keep score. Your body is never going to lie to you. It's going to show you what you're lying to yourself about.
And it'll come out in some type of health issue or...
Yeah, some boils or bumps or something in your body is going to show where you're lying to you. So whenever your body starts to fail you, if you can be authentic with yourself to see that this is just to show you're lying to yourself. And then if you are lying to yourself, then who's the most powerful person who can help you? Is you being honest with yourself.
Absolutely.
And so, you know, when we talked before, we were speaking, we were saying about, you know, people getting offended by us. The more light you hold, the more your potential in your vision to see other people's issues is I know I can walk in there and I can scan someone's energy field and tell them the absolute truth that could heal them. Now, where we as therapists or healers have to use our discernment is if that person is not ready to heal, you can cause a massive psychological breakdown for them. Like, especially if they've been sexually abused and you tell them they've been sexually abused and they're not ready to hear that knowledge, and they have disassociated from that abuse in their childhood to survive their childhood. So you wade in and go blah, 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 and they go, oh, no, I don't think that happened to me. It can
and they project onto you.
Yeah, their body will start to shake usually. Yeah. But they will not necessarily drop into processing it unless they're really sick and ill and they've nothing to lose. You know, if they're living quite a nice life and their body hasn't started to show an ailment to them, they'll get very angry with you and you can cause a psychological sort of imbalance. So I'm always very mindful that, you know, unless people have really hit the brick wall and gone, I think stuff happened and I don't remember it and I'm really sick and ill now and I really need to heal, then you can kind of say, well, are you prepared to, you know, go deeply inside yourself? So sometimes in how I work, it's better that those kinds of people come and see you in person and do the regression, because then they're going to see it themselves, as opposed to you reading their emotional Akashic records over Skype or the internet and them having to try and drop into themselves unless they're really evolved. If you have to use your discernment to see how evolved they are, and then they can heal that aspect of themselves. And the thing is, people often say, and I'm sure you hear the same thing, well, how many sessions is it going to take? Well, you know what, you could clear stuff that was, you know, 20 years and 50 lifetimes in half an hour if you're truly ready. And if you're not ready, it's going to take a bit longer. And if you're in total denial of yourself, it might take a few lifetimes.
Yeah, absolutely. Wow. So powerful stuff that you're doing. And this is self-developed by the sounds of things.
Yeah. You know, I mean, the thing is, though, I learned regression because I could see past lives. So when I started to see past lives, and at that point I was giving talks and workshops in Aveda, because Aveda was still owned by Hearst Rackelbacker then, which was a makeup and, you know, toiletries company, and I used to sell their brand on QVC and model their stuff. And so they said, oh, we love what you're doing, come and give some talks in the Marylebone High Street store in London. So I used to give talks and go to other places, and from giving these talks and workshops, I started to get clients, and then I could see their past lives. And then I thought, well, I need to learn regression, because at that point I was reading the Akashic records without even knowing I was reading the Akashic records. And to be honest, I couldn't even say Akashic. I think I only learned to say Akashic about 10 years ago. And so, because I can be slightly dyslexic. So back then I thought, well, you know what, they need to do regression. I need to learn conventional regression. And actually, from my higher self's perspective, it was giving me the ability to learn conventional hypnotherapy regression, so that I could, because I couldn't see what I was going to be doing. I couldn't see, oh, you're going to be on TV doing past life regression with people. But if I hadn't learned that past life regression, reading the emotional Akashic records, although it's fascinating and interesting, would not have been TV worthy of the level of work that I did on television. That wouldn't have been as entertaining, I don't think. So, you know, your higher self's always guiding you to connect you to these people, and we can't see
the bigger picture,
that web of connections.
Absolutely. And so I would love to know what, like, obviously you're now here and you've got your microphone, like you saw all those years ago. Yeah. Let's talk about the situation that we've got on the planet at the moment, and also the fact that, you know, we are in this kind of great awakening period. We are in this critical point really in humanity's existence. You know, what's your advice to our listeners? Everyone on this podcast is awake, but I would say at varying levels of being out awake. So how important is it for people to be out and awake, would you say?
I think it's super important. It's a lot of my clients right now. And I thought about, this is the key thing I'm seeing with a lot of them. Although they're pretty evolved, a lot of them are still in jobs where they're employed. They're not self-employed. And I've been self-employed since I was 18 and I'm 50 now. So that's all I've ever known, is being self-employed. And I think, you know, under this umbrella of the whole COVID corona thing, is where this is going, if there is a split, is you can either go into a government job where it will be controlled, where all your details will be given to track and trace, and you will need to be vaccinated, and you will need to maybe have a health passport. I personally do not want to live in that reality where my every minutiae detail is you know, noted down. And I don't want us as a species to go there. I don't feel that that's freedom. But I think we're going to see this for a few years, where there is a very heavy level of control for a few years. And some people want it, you know, they feel super safe if it's controlled. And that's the problem that the awakened people are up against, the people who want this. They think it's an illusionary freedom, that their rights, they don't see their rights are being taken away. They think they're being cared for. And, you know, a lot of mothers today I've seen, and yesterday, were up in arms because they're giving this flu mist or vaccine or whatever they're doing at the schools without the parents' permission. Under the World Health Organization. Now, the other day I saw that your child, under the Gillick consensus, it's called the Gillick consensus, which was passed, I want to say 1994, but I might be wrong in the date. But basically it means if your child can be asked by a medical person, do you understand what we're about to administer you? Are you in agreement with this? And that child is in agreement. You do not need the parents' permission, even if they've written a letter saying, I do not consent for my child to be vaccinated or misted or whatever.
Well, to be honest, there's no way I'd have I don't have any children, but if I had children, they would not be in
But people
education.
don't realise this, because, you know, the good people of the earth genuinely believe
that their government's keeping them safe and protecting them,
looking after them, and that their rights will be honoured. And this is not where we're at now. No. And also the other thing is, you know, pertaining to the corona times now, is, you know, you cannot be fined for not wearing a mask. This is civil law, not criminal law. So you cannot be fined for being in a group of 7 or 8. You know, it's not going to happen. The police are not going to happen. The problem you have, and this is where the work that we do comes in, people are going, you know what, just wearing a mask, I know it's wrong, but I just can't deal with the stress of going into a shop and maybe being attacked by an employee of the store asking me where my mask is. There's a security guard
isn't that interesting?
Or a fellow shopper confronting me. We don't like confrontation. And nobody wants to live in a state of fight or flight anxiety and stress when they go shopping. So, you know, people do, whether that's for you and I wearing a lanyard around our neck that we've got from the Hidden Disabilities website, and there are various different companies selling those, or a homemade one you've got, or one you just loaded onto your phone from your own beloved government's website, because these government are telling you clearly on the government website, you don't need to do this. And it clearly states in one sentence, you know, if the thought of wearing a mask causes you distress,
don't wear it.
Do not wear a mask.
I know.
And it's there in black and white on the government website. It also is in black and white saying that on the 19th of March 2020, before lockdown, so the 19th of March, the coronavirus was declassified as a non-highly infectious disease. That is on the UK government's website. And people, when you confront them with that information,
they look at you blankly and go, but everybody's doing it.
what I think is, this is a time where whatever happens to you now is because of the cosmic laws of the universe, and they are cosmic laws, you have to tell people the truth, and it has to be able to be found. And what they are doing is clearly giving us opportunities to find the truth and to choose what you're going to do. What are you going to do? These are not laws, these are advisory guidelines, and the mainstream media is using lies to spellcast you into a reality that is not a truth. And they've got you where they want you, which is fighting against your partner, fighting against your children, fighting against your friends, you know. And the other thing that's happening, which is the worst situation, is, you know, we're abandoning these old people in care homes, you know, and people are dying under the corona watch that would not be dying normally, you know, because they're neglecting their well-being through what's being rolled out.
Well, and then obviously you've got people with mental health issues have gone through the roof. Obviously alcohol sales have gone through the roof. You know, the amount of domestic violence is 600 times more than it was. It's just outrageous. So, yeah.
And mixing these figures up in, you know, they're putting them down as COVID deaths.
And they're not.
And they're not. There are other things that are happening. And I think, so you can go on the government's website and even download the weekly statistics of amounts of people who died during this time and compare it to 2018. And more people died in 2018 than have in 2020 for this period of time in the UK.
Yeah, and I think what I would like to say for anyone listening, you know, both Andrea and I are very, you know, out with regards to no mask wearing. And, you know, just from practical advice, really, I've never had a problem. Like the other day we went to look at a house, and my husband doesn't like to confront. He doesn't like to sort of, you know, rock the apple cart, so to speak. I just literally said to them, I don't wear on, I'm exempt. And they said, okay, fine. And that was it. So, you know, that kind of bit that you're scared about, that confrontation is in your head, you know, and I think that's the bit that people need to really, really get over, because we have this mentality of not standing out, and that has been drilled into us and programmed into us. And actually, you know, not being good enough and not wanting to stand out it's part of the layers that humanity are shedding right now. So practical advice, you know, just do it, just stand in your power.
From a spiritual point of view, it's a test to see can you, but also I think the thing is, and I think we're both the same, we are respectful for people who are still in another belief system. So for example, I've got a friend who, you know, completely is bought into this 100% and is keeping her child 2 meters away from me still in September. And so, you know, when I saw that this was how it was going to be, I do not want to tell that child to stay 2 meters away from me. And so from my point of view, the best thing to do is to not see them, because that would distress me. And I don't want to tell this child that somebody who previously he hugged, he now has to stay 2 meters away from. So I cannot, I think the word, and we're finding, I think this is another word that's come up a lot amongst this, I cannot acquiesce to that reality. So I'm not acquiescing. I'm not going to
play
right now. I'm not going to play that game. I'm not going to pander to your fear. But at the same time, if you owned a shop, even though initially when all this started, I believed the things that people were telling me, which is, it's my land, it's my company, you have to wear a mask. When actually, once I got rejected from the Valentine Spa, where I normally go to the gym and swimming, and I love swimming, they said, you can't come in unless you wear a mask in the communal area. And I said, well, I've got a hidden disabilities pass. And even their lawyers now are telling me that they're in the right and I'm in the wrong. So I spoke to the Equalities Commission Advisory Service, which you can ring up and get some advice from. And what they actually told me was, I said, well, you know, is this company right in the fact that it is their land, it's private land, it's their company policy? Because I got the same at Clark Shopping Village initially. They said it's private land, you have to walk in the direction we tell you to walk in. And it didn't make sense because there was nobody else there. But actually what the Equalities Commission Act of, which is the Human Rights Commission, and the Equalities Commission of 2010 states it is, you can't throw up, even as a shop owner, you can't throw up. It's my shop, it's private land, it's company policy. You can't do that under the Equalities Act.
Oh, that's useful to know.
Because it's discrimination. But at the same time, even if somebody did do that to me, I would maybe now with this knowledge be able to quote that to them. But at the same time, I probably wouldn't want to go in their store. And I think I wouldn't want to upset them either. If they're your rules and that's what you want to do and it's your store and you're fearful to that degree, good luck to you, because you're probably going to bankrupt yourself.
Yeah, well, like you said, it's this split, isn't it? Because what will happen is people who are awakened and living in this sort of more 5D timeline will just create a different reality and go to a different shop. And
well, there's one on the high street in Glastonbury, and he is still in September taking people's temperatures with the thermometer. So it's allowing people to, you know, I had confrontation with him and he came after me down the street. And I said, you cannot point that in my face without my permission. I do not agree to that, because also you're zapping the pineal gland, and also even taking your temperature there isn't accurate. It's more accurate on your wrist. And so I travel around, should I need to go somewhere, and so far it hasn't happened, but should I need to go somewhere, I really need to go in wherever it is, I've got my own thermometer. And
Andrea, I think you need to put together some like awakened guidelines, because I'm loving what you're saying. And I think that's the thing, is if people aren't used to being confronted, and confrontation is probably the wrong word, but what I love is if you can say, well, actually it's this, it's this, it's this, then it diffuses their argument.
Yeah, it's like, listen, you know, I really want to come in here. Like, my thing is swimming. I really have not yet really found anywhere outside swimming in the sea that I've got to go swimming. But I'm not going to put a mask on to go to the spa. I don't like the energy there. It feels really wrong. But I do want to go somewhere else swimming, to the thermal spa. And so if they say you've got to take your temperature and that is their thing, I will put the thermometer in my mouth and show them that.
Well, this is part of our initiation. I think also as well, it's part of our initiation into sovereignty. You know, it's about us reclaiming our power, and it's about us really understanding what is happening and actually what we do need to do and what we don't need to do, and not just being blind and going, just accepting what we've always been told.
And I think the other thing is, obviously the big thing for people now is going to the airport. And in the past, I always used to tell people, and I think they've brought them into all airports now. Now we've got obviously bigger things going on in the airport. But in the past, one of the other things that used to happen to people was, I used to say, you go through the arched scanner and sometimes it'll bleep, and they'll say you've got to go in the X-ray circle machine, which they've brought in the last few years. You do not need to go in the circle X-ray machine. You can ask to be patted down. Under government legislation globally, nobody has to go in that scanning X-ray machine. And you just say, no, under health grounds, I cannot go in that. And they'll try and bully you. And that's the thing, you're coming up against people who are not purposeful bullies.
No, but that's what they've been taught to do.
I get to see, you know, people say, well, when are you doing your spiritual stuff? Well, I'm doing it 24/7. Every breath that you take and every place that you go is an opportunity to speak your truth, to avoid confrontation, but get your truth passed over in a way that either, maybe not even the voice I'm using now, would lower my voice. And you have to find this space within your heart to not be fearful, because they can read that fear. You have to kind of find this space within yourself to be in what I call the sacred neutral, but actually in the truth, which is, you know what you want. You're not going to go in that scanner machine and you just say, oh, hi, you know, I'd like to be patted down. They go, oh, la, la, la. And you go, that's fine, that's okay. No, it's okay. And you be very amenable with them, that you're okay with this, you're going to sign the form, yes, you're happy to go in the room, no, you've come to the airport early to give time for this process to happen. And then they're perfectly lovely with you and you have that experience. And so it's you creating, and this is the reality split, you creating the reality you want to live in. You know, it's like I only ever, when I go to the supermarket, I park in one of 3 parking spaces. I don't even think about it. It just happens because I like to be in that parking space. And so I've created a reality. Now, in another reality, there might be another car already parked there, but in the reality I exist in, because it's a holographic universe, in my reality, there is no car there, only my chariot going in there.
Love that. Totally love that.
When you believe something 110% and then stop pushing it, you don't push it, because I've got no backlog in my subconscious that I've got to clear about that story and just in that particular thing, the car park space or the x-ray machine. There's no story. There's just me going, this is my truth. I've not got, oh, here we go.
Yes. Which then reverberates out into the universe.
That's not happening for me. I'm just sailing along in my ever joyful presence of being, and it lines up for you.
Like it. Really,
and I think
like
that's
it.
where we're going. But all of us right now have maybe got, like we said with the diamond, we've got a facet of that thing where it's not lining up, where we do get confrontation.
So this cycle that we're coming to an end, that the way I kind of view it is almost like all that stuff that you've described in your diamond is coming up to be cleared at the end of this cycle. You would agree?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I was so in agreement. I was like, yes.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, that's it. So, you know, we're going to get rocked about like a ship at sea with everything that we haven't processed now. It's like, this is your opportunity. Everything is going to be, and they're doing it. You know, the government are like the spiritual teacher now. If you see it that way, they're throwing everything at you. Are you going to believe this? This is our latest. We're going to go hunting, shooting and fishing. That's right. And you're going to be in your group of 6, not able to go on holiday with your family because you've got a baby, which makes 7. So tough for you. And which is
well, I love the idea that actually, you know, that this is all part of the awakening process, isn't it? It's kind of like, how much shit will we get thrown at us before we can stand up and go, no? You know, and I have to be honest, I like the narrative of the fact that actually Trump is in control and actually he's getting the governments to do that because, you know, he wants to create leaders and he wants to create, and again, I'm not giving away my power because I'm very much somebody who is all about stepping into their personal sovereignty, but that is what's going to take. It's going to take us really being rattled and riled to really step into what it is that we can achieve.
And this is predicted programming. All this was bound to happen. If your previous self had thought that you might be driving in your car wearing a pair of marigolds and a mask, you know, a year ago, you'd have thought you need to lock those people up. You know, but I have seen the law coming in today that it's illegal now to drive in a mask in your car. So that's a positive thing.
I just used to giggle every time I'd see someone. I was just laughing, like.
But the compassionate part of us has got to go, you know what, that mask is welded to their face because they're masking their own fears.
Yeah.
It's only their own fears they don't want to face. And it's like, it's almost like a teddy bear or a nunu blanket now. You know how children have blankies. They are, you know, the people who are not awake are so terrified and frightened. They're using this little mask to kind of, it's like a comfort blanket, you know, even though they might just be breathing in their own dirty bacteria and creating a lung infection as the byproduct of doing that.
It's easier for them to do that than face their own fears, is what you're saying. I'm going to have
to plug you in. Hold on a second. I should not plug in.
Yeah, it's easier for them, though, to do that rather than have to confront their own fears. And I'm seeing a lot in my community where people are finally getting out of jobs that they've hated for so long, or relationships that are toxic. And, you know, it's 20 years in the making, but suddenly they're stepping into it. And, you know, that's what we're here to do, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think that was what I was saying when you asked me initially, and I digressed at a tangent. I love a tangent.
Too feminine energy on a tangent.
What I'm seeing is lots of people, it's like, where do we go from here? Because now I've lost my corporate job. Now I'm going to have to find another job. And actually this relationship is not sustainable going forward. What am I going to do about that? You know, how am I going to deal with my maybe teenager or adult children having a different belief than me? You know, what am I going to do going forward? And I think we're at the point where there are jobs that we are going to create for ourselves that we have not been created yet. We don't even know what those are, because whether we like it or not, so this is an interesting book. I read this, I'm reading this one called The Great Reset. And so, you know, once you realize that everything's happening was planned, you know, if you look at the Rockefeller Lockstep from 2014, the document you can download as a PDF, everything that we're going through now, they predicted and planned for us. This has all been planned. You can look at the murals in Denver Airport and you can see kids from all around the world wearing a flag mask over their mouths. This has been planned, whether you want to
the Olympics opening ceremony.
Yeah. Oh, that was awful, wasn't it? The 2012 UK Olympic ceremony. It's all there. So when you look and you do this research, which you might want to share with your families or your friends, you know, to say, look, all this was planned. I know it's hard to believe, because if you've spent 2 months driving around in a mask and a pair of rubber gloves, and now you found out it's all been planned, you feel shame. And, you know, shame is the hardest thing to deal with, is our own personal shame, that I've been an idiot. Oh, I'm so embarrassed. You know, shame, embarrassment. Oh my God, what have I done?
Why didn't I listen?
Yeah, get over it. Just forgive yourself. You had to do that. And, you know, at the beginning of this whole Corona thing, I had something, you know, I genuinely believe that they've upped the frequencies on the planet, through the smart meters, the Wi-Fi, and Huawei has lost the contract for the UK, and they've got till 2027 to remove it. But there were some frequencies, and there are still some frequencies. In fact, today the electricity board are meant to be coming to look at my cables over my house, because I can hear ringing in my ears, like horrific ringing. And this is an amazing book called The Invisible Rainbow, The History of Electricity by Arthur Furstenberg. And it explains that ever since we've had the electrification of the earth, we've had the coronavirus. We've basically had flu and cold symptoms ever since we've introduced electricity to the planet. And it documents the electrification of the countryside, the increase in things like diabetes and other health implications linked to the electrification. So our bodies cannot take that level of electrification, so it tries to detoxify this electrification. And when all this happened, dust fell from the sky, there were sonic booms over my house. I was so static, it was incredible. I electrocuted myself on the kitchen sink. I had to really earth myself, you know, earthing yourself. So I sleep on an earthing blanket now, which has the Schulman frequency. The Schulman frequency is the Earth's frequency. So even if this is part of the Earth's axis shifting in the 26,000 year cycle, you've got to come into alignment to the new Schulman frequencies of the Earth. So you've got to walk barefoot on the Earth. So earthing is really good. And if you feel you can't walk on the Earth that much, you know, look up some earthing blankets. There's one I particularly like, often post it on Facebook because it's an organic one and it's woven with silver. And you don't need a stake in the earth, you just need to plug it into the earthing socket in your wall.
Plug, yeah.
But even if your electricity's off, you won't get a back charge coming at you because it's only into the earthing socket. So things like that are going to be really useful for us as our bodies are increasing in this radiation frequency, which may naturally be happening, but could have been amplified by all these unnatural Wi-Fi frequencies as well. And we're in what's called the solar minimum. So the Earth's going through a solar minimum now. So the weather will change naturally, but also what we might have is crops failing in certain parts of the world, as well as them trying to manipulate the crops as well. What we might have is that we're planting the wrong crops in the wrong places because the Earth's temperature is changing in the inner core of the Earth. So certain things that grew in one country won't grow there anymore and might grow somewhere else. So that's part of the kind of reset. So not that you need to go into fear, but you need to maybe learn going forward how to be more sustainable in yourself. I've got an allotment since lockdown, so I'm growing vegetables. So I think it's not relying, and I think that is about spiritual maturity, in not relying on the outer world for everything to and of course there's things we don't like doing, so that's why we have jobs, so we can pay somebody else to do what their joy is, so we do what our joy is. But things might get quite challenging in the next few months.
Well,
and
I think people are sorry. I think really people are going to have to develop. I've found since lockdown, my spiritual practice, I've doubled down on it. Like meditation twice a day and Reiki twice a day, and I need to do it because it's the way of keeping me in that kind of nice, chilled out vibe state. And because there is more stuff happening, externally. But I want to say thank you, Andrea. I've just realized the time. We could literally talk all day. Really want to say thank you. Fascinating conversation. And I feel like we just hit the tip of the iceberg as well. Like, we'll have to get you back and we'll have to go straight into that stuff.
It's nice. It's like having a coffee and a chat without being present. But I think it's lovely to talk over the internet. But I think the other thing, just maybe my parting comment is, don't stop meeting people in person, because I think it's super important to meet people in reality.
Yeah, and absolutely. I think we're going into this world, aren't we, where we're living at home and then we're connecting through the internet. And actually, like you said, we need physical contact. Like, we're lucky if you do live with a partner or family, but if you don't, then it's even more imperative. So absolutely. So thank you so much. Really appreciate you joining us. I think we're going to get you back if you'd be open to it.
Well, my website details, because I've got
yes, absolutely. How do people contact? Sorry, how do people contact?
Yeah,
I think I'm trying to process everything you've just told me.
I've got free meditations on my website for you to download, there's a gorgeous earth peace meditation one, which is just really lovely. I recorded that in Sedona in 2008 because I started doing Earth Peace Meditation, which is the 22nd of September every year. I do that at 11 o'clock. And so you can download the free meditation and listen to that. And then there's another little daily meditation. And if you like those, there's other ones. So that's AndreaFoulkes.com, which is AndreaFoulkes.com. And I do at present love posting on Facebook. I've got 2 accounts, my business and my personal one, and I do write a lot on there, and I do have Twitter and Instagram, but I don't really use those so much, and I've got loads and loads of free videos on YouTube as well. And light language. Oh, shall I end with a light language?
Yeah, go for it. That'd be amazing.
Are you familiar with light language?
I am familiar with light language, yes. I've had a dabble myself, but I'm probably not as fluent as yourself.
Well, there's lots of different languages, and I like to bring in higher sophophonic frequencies as well. So they tend to be, if we go into a future timeline, so everyone who's already watched this has already tuned into it on some higher self level. So we'll bring in a light language that's linked to the collective group of energy of everyone who's ever going to listen to this. Cool. So the frequency will be for them. Do you like that?
Nice, yeah.
Okay, it's about a minute transmission, so just kind of closing our eyes and just taking a deep breath, and it is quite loud, so just to prepare you, and just let this sound come through. So for your higher self, so Iramakuya, Kiana Makusa, Aranta Kamakuya, Kiana Ramakuya. Ela omakuya, aranta kamakuya, esata ramakuya, aranta kamakuya, kiana ramakuya. Ia oto omakuya. Ramakuya, asata alone. Uya, karakamoku.
Wonderful. I can feel the energy almost pulsing.
Yeah, it does. It kind of goes into where in your body you need to. What it's doing is unbraiding the dormant DNA codes that got shut down.
So it's like an activation at the same time. Wow, fantastic. Andrea, thank you so much. I will make sure all your details are in the show notes. But thank you. That was absolutely wonderful. Fascinating conversation. Really enjoyed it. Please find Andrea on Facebook. Tag me if you're watching. You can tag me on Instagram. But yeah, come and let us know what you thought of the conversation. And we will see you next week with another incredible guest. Thank you so much for listening to the Dharma Life podcast. I do hope you enjoyed this episode. Please come over and say hello on my Instagram, our Facebook group, and also please let me know what you thought. So if you are listening, please take a screenshot of the podcast that you are listening to. Tag me on Instagram and I will reshare your post, and please let me know what it is that you got out of today's episode. Remember, when we do our Dharma, we are happier, healthier, we live longer, and we have a deep sense of unshakable inner peace.